All right. Well, I think it's time to begin. So, Kalispera, everybody. That's where my Greek is going to stop. Maybe for the goodbye, it's going to be some Greek as well, but that's where it ends right now because I'm going to do this in English because my Greek is just not proficient enough. Really nice of you all to join us for the. I'm just going to let everybody in who wants to be in here as well. So it's great that you join us for the RETaC presentation. This is about an hour to inform you about this new development that I've been working on for the last couple of years. And Yanis and Alex have already joined the training. And Alexis, who's here as well, participated, and they have some experience with RETaC. So if you have any questions, you can also ask them, of course. So I want to take you into the world of relation, emotion therapy, and coaching for an hour, for you to just get a sense of what's actually new in the world of neuroscience and how this actually can really change how we work in the field of personal development and in the fields of therapy and coaching. It's my personal opinion that this knowledge will actually change the whole field of personal development and psychology. And I understand that this is a big statement, but I'm making it anyway because I really believe that this is going to happen through this new knowledge. I'm going to share my part of a presentation. I'm going to come back to you. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat so I can gather the questions and see at the end if I can answer some of your questions. For now, just to give you an impression, I've been in the field of NLP since 1995. And I've been an NLP trainer since 1998, I think. And after that, I went to NLPU, where I first started. I went 10 whole semesters and assisted on all the trainings and did my masters and trainers, and went to Michael Hall from Neurosemantics and became partner with Robert Dilts in his leadership group, where we did work in company. But before all that, I actually have a background in neurology. I was head of neurology rehabilitation in the Royal London Hospital for about 4 to 5 years. Did a lot of research, and I had about 30 physical therapists under me working with acute neurology. So I had to learn a lot about how the brain works, and that's always stayed with me. So I can say I still know quite a bit, and it's been really handy learning about this new neuroscientific information because it helped me. I've been really fortunate. It actually helped me to translate the new neuroscientific developments into the field of coaching and therapy and personal development. So not as an abstract thing, but actually as a factual thing. How can we translate new neurological ideas into interventions with people? And that's what I've been working on. So I'm going to share with you my screen. And put you on top because I always find it really strange to look at the side. So we're going to talk about relation, emotion therapy, and coaching because that's the full explanation of RETaC, relation, emotion therapy, and coaching. And to give you an idea, relation, emotion. Oh, where are we here? Oh yeah. Hello. Sorry, I'm clicking. What's happening here? Here we go. So RETaC is accredited by the Dutch Society of Professional Hypnotherapists, and I'm in the course of having it acknowledged at several other international institutions, and I'm in the process of having an accreditation by the ICF, the International Coach Federation, for the full coaching training, which is part of this. So you can have an idea of how this is received in some with some professional societies. Now, yeah. So the tagline that I've been using for RETaC is that RETaC will change the way you think change works, because it actually really helped me in changing the way I think change worked until a couple of years ago. As most of you are into NLP, you probably have some other professional background as well. Some of you are beginning in NLP, others are much more advanced. But as I've been taught that change works in a certain kind of way. And we use models for change, and we use, and some of them are quite effective. Others, take time. You need to figure out, how do I actually apply all this? And in the years that I've been working, I've been coaching clients. I have, let's say, approximately, on an average week for the last 28 years, I have about 20 to 30 coaching clients a week, next to writing and teaching. And so I've been able to measure my effectiveness quite well. And I've been always quite effective because I had a lot of clients continuously. But something has shifted in my work that has taken my work to a really next level of making changes with my clients. And it's excited me so much that I actually want to share this with everybody on the globe. RETaC is a method that restores emotional regulation. And I was never aware of the real meaning of emotional regulation. Actually, I did not know the word emotional regulation until a couple of years ago. I understood that emotions are important, and I understood, with NLP, do we directly work with emotions? Actually, not really. Most models actually work around emotions because we work with the 5 senses: seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, and tasting. But we all understand as human beings that emotions are really important to us. We don't have to go to a school to understand how emotions influence ourselves, how emotions and feelings influence the way we relate, how emotions influence the way we have intimate relationships or not. We all know that. We all know that our children are full of feelings, and it bounces all up and down and left to right, and they fall and they cry and they stand up and they laugh again.
Ή μάλιστα οι πρώτες 4 μήνες που έχουμε μαζί μας στη Νέα Ινωά. Γιατί πιστέψτε με, έρχονται κι άλλα πάρα πολύ ωραία νέα από εδώ και στο εξής, γιατί η Ινωά δεν είναι κάτι που απλά ήρθε για να μείνει και ήρθε για να...
Hello? Your phone is on, I think.
Vasily, if you go on the tail, on the face, you can mute the person.
If I would know who it is.
The name is iPhone.
The name is iPhone. I will mute it. Yeah, here we go. Yeah. So we all know that emotions and feelings are a really important part of our lives. And so I've just actually really, in my experience, I think I really just started to touch the surface of how important emotional regulation is, and how important it is to restore emotional regulation within ourselves and within our relationships. So RETaC is about restoring emotional regulations in us individually, but also within the relationships that we have. RETaC is also a new method of coaching and therapy that very quickly goes to the essence of a problem. I mean, extremely quickly, actually. I just yesterday did a demonstration an international demonstration for a small group of people. And within no more than 3 minutes, we got to really, really deep essential feelings. But the other thing is you can actually also generate really deep sustainable solutions with RETaC in a very organic, very gentle, very organic way. So the question we want to ask ourselves in understanding the importance of emotional regulation, the key question we want to ask ourselves is, how do our emotions emerge? You know, the interesting thing about this question is many books have been written about emotions and feelings. We all know that there are books about emotions with 435 different emotions. You have, let's say, a couple of core emotions like anger and fear, love and happiness. You know, there are a couple of core emotions, sadness, and most books actually are about which emotions are there, how are they triggered, where do they come from, what can you possibly do with them. But there have not been books that have been answering the questions: how do emotions emerge? How are they actually made? What does an emotion consist of? And that question turns out to be a critical question in new neuroscience. So we're going to ask ourselves, I'm going to take you through 3 important questions. If we want to understand a little bit more about emotional regulation and the importance of emotional regulation. So the first question is, are we born with emotions? A crucial question. And you know, just think about this for a moment and just give me a short yes or no in the chat, just to get a feel of how you all think about, you know, if we're born with emotions or not. Yeah, I got a couple of people saying yes. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, there we go. Yeah. Somebody's saying it's a good question. Yeah, it is really, it is a very good question. Yeah. Yeah. If it's biologically involved, yes. All right. So you know, just for now, I would say we have 100% yes. So now here's the shocker for you all. Recent research shows that we are not born with emotions. Now, this is tricky because we all know that children cry, you know, and we know that. But having feelings is something completely different than having emotions. So yes, we are all born with feelings, but no, we are not born with emotions. It is actually so that emotions turn out to be a consequence of socialization. Let me just give a little bit of an explanation for that. It turns out from the moment of conception in the mother's body, from the moment of conception till birth, till about 8 until 16 years, though that's the time stretch, it turns out that we actually learn all the critical emotions from our culture of origin. And our culture of origin is not just the country we live in, or the neighborhood, or the political party your parents belong to, or the wealth group that you belong to. But it's very closely related to your direct family system. Your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, your grandmother, your grandfather, your schooling system, and of course, all the experiences you have within that system. Because when you just think about it, you know, our parents, I just talked about this tomorrow with a client, this morning with a client of mine. You know, my dad, he's 86 right now. He lives in Greece. But I can say that my dad has very consequent behavior. And he's had very consequent behavior all throughout his life. Like my mother had. My mother has died, but she had very consequent behavior throughout her life. She could let me know what was right or wrong. My father's, just look at his face, just lets me know what he thinks is appropriate or not. Yeah. Our parents can actually show us, and our brothers and sisters and the people around us can show us through continuous behavior what everything means. So from the moment of conception, we have hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of non-verbal and verbal examples of what everything means. So we actually learn. We learn all these feelings. So the second question we want to ask ourselves: do emotions have a place in our brain? Now, this is a more abstract question if you're not into, let's say, neuroscience. Like I like neuroscience, so I'm a bit into it. But it's an important question as well, because we have to ask ourselves, you know, is there a location for emotions in our brain? And the assumption has been that if you know, if I do my head like this, if you can see, let's say you could see my brain through my skull. My brain is in here, and there's a middle part here. It's called the midbrain. And the assumption has been, yeah, emotions are in the midbrain. And the interesting thing is that assumption has been around since like around 1890, or a little bit later, when a very important neurologist, Mr. Broca, I don't know if anybody heard of you, but the famous Mr. Broca was the first to discover a very important part of the brain. The part of the brain that actually creates words, the motor speech center. It's here on the right side. And he discovered that. So that was a revolution in neuroscience. And everybody went, whoa, there's a location for speech. And then later on, everybody started to research the brain, and they found all these locations. So they found a location for the finger, a location for the hand, a location for the arm. And hence, this whole idea was born that everything in the brain has a particular space. It inhabits a particular space. So then, in the beginning of the 19th century, Mr. Broca produced a paper. And in this paper, he said, I found emotions are located in the midbrain, in this part of the brain. And at that time, there was a lot of controversial about that, because there were other important neuroscientists who said, well, it's not true. But Mr. Broca was the neurologist of that time. So his knowledge overruled all the other knowledge. And what emerged from this is the idea that emotions are actually located in one part of the brain, like everything else. But as it turns out, his research was not actually research. It was a hypothesis. And it turns out that emotions are not bound to an area in the brain. It is actually, emotions are made by the whole brain and the whole nervous system into our bodies. So emotions are made with the whole system. And it's even so that, let's say, when you scan a brain and you are angry about something, and you're angry at your spouse, your husband or your wife, about something, then a certain area of the brain can lit up. Let's say this part of the brain. And now let's say you get angry when you're on the road and you're driving a car because somebody is almost driving you off the road. It turns out that the very same emotion suddenly is made by a completely different area of your brain. So now the whole field of neurology, actually, let me tell you, on this field of neurology, the whole field of personal development has developed. So with the assumption that everything is based in a location, we developed our models for development and psychology. So here you see, which is it's actually a little paper, but that's a good way for you to learn some Dutch. This is feet, and this is hand, and this is eye, and this is tongue. Yeah? Voeten, handen, ogen, tong. And this is the feeling area, so it says voelen. This is the movement area, so it says bewegen. So in this little thing, you can see the brain from the top, like from up here. And you see the blue area, that's the motor function of our brain, just a very small function of our brain. And here the orange area, it's the feeling function of our brain. So this is really accurate. This is true. But it's the motor part of our brain and the sensory part of our body. So that has a location. Emotions do not seem to have a location. It's a whole brain function. From this idea of everything has a compartment, this whole idea started to emerge that everything has a compartment. You know, your desire for sex, if you're a sports person or not, if you like beer, if you have fantasies, if you love to shop or eat chocolate. But we know now that these are much more complex things. So this brings me to the third question where I need your, let's say, your participation again. Because the third question is a really critical question in understanding how our emotions emerge. And the third question is, what is the most important function of the brain? And for that, I just want to stop sharing my screen, and I just want to hear some opinions, not all, because there are 36 people in the space. So let me just, if you have an idea, what's the most important function of our brain? Quite a few of you are probably into psychology, maybe even therapists. But have you ever thought of this question? What is the most important function of our brain? If you and you don't get 5, you just get 1. So what could that be? The most important function of your brain? Does anybody have a suggestion or an idea?
Yes, Mina raised her hand.
Yeah, where's Mina?
Hello.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi.
Mr. Vasily.
Yes, sir.
To keep us away from danger is the most.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Good answer. Yeah. I'm not going to give my answer yet, but I'm just going to collect a couple more. Thank you.
There are some answers coming in the chat, like
yeah. Let me just see. Existence, keep us alive. Processing information, survival. Yeah. Anybody else who has something that diverges from that? Something different? No? Well, let me give you the clue of what turns out to be the most important function of our brain. The most important function of our brain is to predict what's going to happen. And this is a really, really critical thing to start to understand. To predict what's going to happen. How does our brain make predictions, do you think? How does it, where does the brain, you know, what information does the brain use to make predictions, do you think? Does anybody have an idea? If you could, you know, if you have, so you have these predictions. Let's assume, I'm going to explain in a minute what I mean with this. But the brain makes predictions, but from where? Yeah. So Vicky says from past experience. Okay. Yeah. What else? What do you think? From what information? What kind of information does the brain makes its predictions? If that's the most important function of the brain. Anybody have an idea? Vaak ook. Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and sensory. Of course, because in NLP, that's what we're actually saying. That's the information source of the brain. We call it the language of the brain. And with that language, the brain actually, what we call, makes its assumptions. Yeah. But actually, a prediction is something else than an assumption. It's something very different. So let me tell you where the brain makes its predictions from. It actually makes its predictions from your body. And a very specific area of your body. Because as it turns out, there is a sixth sense. It actually really exists. When I heard about this the first time, about 6 years ago, I was in a room and I was listening to a neuroscientist, and she mentioned this system, and I immediately Googled it. I was like, you know, I know a lot about neurology, come on. And so I Googled it, and to my surprise, interoception is actually an acknowledged sensory system, and it's been around for more than 100 years. But nobody uses that sensory system except the field of endocrinology. Because the interoceptive sensory system actually informs us about the state of our internal organs. And now you want to imagine this. Our internal organs are crucial for our survival. I'm not talking about my finger. I'm not talking about my hearing. You know, I'm not talking about my sensory feeling of my skin. Not even my motor system. I'm talking about the functioning of my organs and our organs. So let me give you an example of what I mean with prediction. So let's say in a moment, let's say if you go outside and suddenly you have to run because there's traffic and you have to run to cross the street. And if you're in a big city in Athens, you probably have to run a lot to get across the street safely. But what happens in an instant is because of the change in blood pressure, your blood drops down, your heart needs to pump blood to your brain. And because of the fact that needs to happen, your heart rate needs to go up. But now here's the trick. When your heart rate goes up, your energy demand rises in your heart. And when your energy demand rises, your heart needs more energy, otherwise it cannot function. But now here's the thing. We also used to assume that energy is freely available in our bloodstream or autonomic, like our heart just goes higher in rate and it just gets the energy because of the insulin from your liver and whatever. And it just happens autonomically, but it turns out it does not work autonomically. What happens is that the moment your heart rate goes up, the interoceptive system actually notices a change from, let's say, 50 heartbeats to 70 heartbeats in an instant, or 50 to 60. And what it has to do, it has to calculate what this means for the energy need of the heart. So the brain just calculates like a crazy, like a supercomputer, and it calculates how much energy it needs. And you know what it does with that? It makes a prediction about how much energy the heart will need for the next heartbeat. So not for the heartbeat happening right now, but it is actually calculating the energy need for the heartbeat to come. Just think about this. Right now in your body, billions of processes at the same time in your organ system, your lungs, throat, stomach, liver, glands, all this here in your thorax. At this moment, billions of processes changing in energy needs, and the brain calculates from changes in the interoceptive system, it calculates what all these changes mean for the energy need. And it predicts the energy need of all these cells before the need is there. Why is it important to do that before? Because if it happens in the moment, it's too late and your organs get damaged. So isn't that amazing? Our brain is a prediction machine. So now let me give you this. Let me give you this example. My daughter Lima, she's 11 years old, and I remember. Actually, I very clearly remember because I use this example quite a lot. When she was about 7 or 8 years old, it was in the morning. I made her breakfast. I made her favorite breakfast, and she came down, and I said, "Hey, honey," and she looked a little bit, like not comfortable, and she sat in front of her food, and she didn't touch her food. So as a parent, like if you are a parent, you definitely know this. You kind of go, "Would you like something else?" So I think maybe you don't like the food I've made, so maybe you want something else. And my daughter just went like this. "I don't know, Daddy." And then I asked her, like every parent, I said, "Are you not feeling well?" So I tried to feel her temperature. Because if we don't want to eat, there's something going on, And she said, "I don't know, Daddy." And then the third question, like all parents do, because we are adults and we know how it goes, so we kind of go, "Is there something wrong?" Because we know that you can have a stomach ache when there's something psychologically troubling you. And my daughter just went, "I don't know, Daddy." So I was like, okay, and she went to school, and that afternoon she came back, and I opened the door and said, "Hi, honey," and she ran to me, she grabbed me, and she started crying, and I took her on my lap, and I said, what's the matter?" And she said, "Daddy, my best friend doesn't want to play with me." And I was like, "So what happened?" "Yeah, there's a new girl in the class, and my best friend suddenly doesn't want to play with me." So I took her and I comforted her and said, "Oh, well, it's going to be fine. Your best friend, she needs to get adjusted to the new situation, and everything will be fine in a couple of days." And she calmed down, and her stomach ache went away, and she was like, "Okay, Daddy," and she started playing. So now we go to bed, and the next morning, I kind of forgot about the incident. My daughter comes down, she's completely pale. And I'm like, "Whoa, what's wrong with you?" She said, "Well, I'm not feeling so well, Daddy." So again, I put her favorite food, and she's not eating. And I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Well, I've got a stomach ache, Daddy." And I was like, wow, maybe she's ill. Maybe there's something, because she really looks not well. So I was like, "Are you feverish? Is something wrong?" "I don't know, Daddy." And then I went again, "Is something wrong?" And she said, I don't know, Daddy. And then, okay, so I said, can you go to school? Yeah. I gave her some tea. We took her clothes, and she didn't want to go out of the door. She said, I don't want to go to school. And it was the first time ever she said that. And then it clicked to me. Then I realized her interoceptive system actually noticed the same change in her organs as the day before. But she had those feelings because she experienced what you could call rejection. So what happened is that her brain actually started to predict unconsciously that she was going to be rejected again. So our interoceptive system, let me just say this differently. Our emotional brain actually uses, turns out with new neuroscientific knowledge, it actually uses the same mechanism of restoring energy balance. It uses it to actually predict emotional states. And that is completely new, because the brain actually uses information from our organs. And, when I started to realize what this all means, it all became clear to me. Because all these funky feelings that we can have, I have this, like a pressure on your chest, or tightness in your body, or a stuck feeling, or feeling like you're in a small space, or feeling like you're cut off from other people. These are not metaphors. I used to think they're metaphors. They're also metaphors, but actually what I realize now is that they're organ feelings. They're feelings that we cannot determine with our sensory system of seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, and tasting. They are actually sensations rising up from our organs. And what these feelings do, they create an unavoidable reality. Because what has turned out in neuroscientific experiments is that this system, this interoceptive system, overrules our cognitive thinking. When you think about it, it's logical, because your heart regulation and your stomach regulation and your kidney regulation and so on, they're a million times more important than what you can think of. So you probably know the feeling. I would bet my money on it that you all know the feeling. Oh yeah, I know I should do this, but I'm actually doing that. I know I shouldn't drink, but I'm drinking. I know I should be going to the gym, but I'm not. I know I should not be yelling at my wife, but I am. I know we all know that. That's because it's a different source of information. There's an overruling source of information that comes from our organs that overrules what we understand. And it actually overrules a lot of tools in therapy and personal development. Because the really deep issues actually arise from this system that you've learned in the past. So let me just give you a sense of how deep this goes. Let me give you a quick example of time-wise, just a quick example. The researchers I'm talking about, I don't know if you have this in Greece, but in some countries you have this system where a person in a prison who has been convicted for a serious crime can every year apply for an early release. It's called a parole. You have it in Greece as well, yeah. So they asked a group of judges in Israel, if they could actually monitor their physical well-being, with hospital thing like heart rate and sweat secretion and blood pressure, and they were monitoring all of that. So these three judges, they went into a jail and they would all day see people who would ask for a parole, for an early release. So this went on for 2 weeks. Every day people would come in, they would judge if they could be released or not, and the next person would come, and the next and the next. After 2 weeks, the researchers asked the judges to come to their office. And they said, listen, we found a really important statistic. And they said, what? Well, what we found is that when you look at a full day of working from, let's say, 9 to 4 or 5, if you look at a full day of working, what turns out that most rejections, so people would say, I've done a really good job, I've been nice and I've helped people, please can I come out, can you release me? Most rejections, 90% of rejections would happen between 11 and 12:30. Most. Now think of this, you have judges, and judges are interesting people because judges have to rule according to the law. So the law is not emotional. The law is logical. Am I right? So these judges wouldn't believe this. They actually went, what are you talking about? Well, we have it between 11 and 12:30. And they were mind blown. So they say, okay, we're going to do this for another 2 weeks. So now these judges know, so they have the knowledge. But they said, what we want to do is every time you rule over somebody, I want you to fill out this questionnaire. And the questions were like, I base my judgment on the law. I base my judgment on X, Y, Z. But also, I base my judgment on the fact that I don't trust that person. I base my judgment on the fact that the person I think is lying. So you have very objective and very subjective questions and answers. So after 2 weeks, it shifted a little bit, but still between 11 and 12:30, most rejections. And you know what it turned out? Between 11 and 12:30, almost all of the reasons that the judges gave were subjective. So they would say, I just didn't have a good feeling about this. Or, I didn't trust him. So now my question to you, what is going on between 11 and 12:30 that is not going on between 9 and 11 and 12:30 and 4? What's going on? If you have a hunch, put it in the chat, please, if you have an idea. Does anybody have an idea what's going on between in that time frame? What could have happened?
Maybe because they are hungry.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know what happens? An hour and a half before people get hungry, their heart rate goes up a little bit. Their blood pressure goes up a little bit. But we don't notice this. This is unconscious. But you know who notices it? Our emotional brain. Because for our emotional brain, this is actually a critical change. And the emotional brain needs to calculate what this means. And the emotional brain needs to calculate what this means for the energy needs to come. But now here's the trick. Because we have learned in NLP that our 5 senses are the most important: seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, and smelling. But here's the trick, guys. These 5 senses are all aimed at the external world. Interoception is fully aimed at our internal world. So what happens we all, you and I, we all live actually in two sensory systems at the same time. The external sensory system, that is information that we gather to kind of see if we can react to the world. And at the same time, our internal sensory system reacts to all of this. And it starts to predict. And our predictions are unconscious. But what happens, it turns out that for our emotional brain, the outside reality is irrelevant. Because reality for the emotional brain is not what's out there, it's what's in here. So the emotional brain is actually reacting with a prediction.
Okay.
So the emotional brain is reacting with a prediction, not to what's going on in the outside world, it's reacting to a prediction to what's going on in the inside world. And that prediction completely overrules what's going on out there, outside of it. Isn't that amazing? So why is this all important? Well, ultimately, we all base our decision on one thing and one thing only, and I've become aware of this in the last couple of years. As you know, and I'm like, how could I have never seen this like this? But in working and developing a method to actually translate this knowledge to personal development and psychology, I started to realize that. Oh, excuse me, can you turn off your microphone? Παρακαλώ.
You can do it. Okay, all right.
So ultimately, we base all our decisions, so just every decision in every moment, think about this. We base it ultimately on this simple equation. Does it feel right? Or does it feel wrong? If something feels right, we say, yeah, we're going to do this. Yeah, I'm going to trust that person. Yeah, I'm going to go for the job. Yeah, I'm going to fall in love with that person. If something feels wrong, we can do a couple of things, mainly two things. We can adjust that feeling. Let's adjust it. Hopefully, I can make it turn right so that I can feel good about it. Hopefully. And if I can't make it, some people actually spend 20, 30, 40 years trying to adjust the feeling that is not right. Because they cannot let go of that. They want to have that feeling that's not right and try to adjust it, but it doesn't work. Because you cannot adjust. I'm going to say something really radical. You cannot really adjust feelings with a cognitive approach. Something completely different has to happen. So, in this way, how we feel shapes every decision we make, and therefore it actually shapes our life's course. It completely shapes the course of our lives. And that's why emotional regulation is so unbelievably critical in the field of personal development for our own development. Because I can tell you from my own experience, in developing a method, I have, I just get a good question in the chat. I will get into that in a moment. But I have changed things that I was never able to change with any other method that I encountered. And what I've been doing, because I've been fortunate that I understand and I can read the neurology and also the scientific work and articles. So I've been modeling, and I developed a method to work directly with the core or the essence of our decision making, which is our interoceptive sensations. I found a way to actually directly work and transfer that to other people so that they can actually work with it. Through conversation, like you already know of. through conversation, a model through conversation. So just to give you an idea of how our prediction cycle kind of works, there is an event in the world, something happens, it creates intrasensory changes. We don't notice them most of the time. We can, but most of the time we don't. Those strange, funny feeling like warm or cold or blocked or jammed or pressured or all these funny feelings which are actually not under the whole realm of emotions. But actually it turns out that they're critical for our emotions. And these intrasensory changes are matched with other unconscious memories. So our brain just goes, oh, I need to kind of find matches of this feeling. Because from the memories, the brain can actually make quite accurate predictions about what's going to happen. And we do not, I'm going to say it really strangely, you may not believe me, but give it a try. It turns out we're not responding to what's out there, we are responding to our own predictions. And then, only then, we experience emotion. Emotion is the end result of our prediction cycle. So working with emotion is not very effective because it's the effect of something completely different. So if you're thinking about any of these things, if you want to become not just a good coach, but an extraordinary coach, not an effective therapist, but a really profoundly effective therapist, or if you long for a personal or relational change that you've been looking for a long time and you've tried lots of processes on them, change behavior, behavioral generator, re-imprint, I don't know, phobia, trauma cure, whatever, you know, gentling, everything, and it still has not really changed, you might want to think about emotional regulation for change. So that brings me to almost to the end. And I want to bring into your awareness that we're going to do a 3-day RETaC foundation training in Athens. And the follow-up of that, the 7-day practitioner training, also in Greece, near Athens. And there's after that a 7-day coaching therapy certification training, which is not yet being planned in Greece yet, but it's planned in the Netherlands. So if you're interested in that, you can use your phone actually for the to scan the code there. It will take you to my RETaC page, and I, you know, there's a lot to say about this. So I've kept it really brief and short. Forgive me for that because we only have an hour. There's an incredible lot to say about this, but I want to take a couple of minutes to click away the presentation to see and hear if you have questions or remarks about what I've been sharing with you.
There was a question in the chat box, Vasily. Did you see that?
The question. Sorry, who?
There was the last question in the chat box.
Yes, yeah. Does this mean that there are no people who make choices rationally, whose priority is logical and not emotional? I don't think so. Of course, we have cognition and we can think. We all do. Yeah, we're not just emotional people. But the source of our decision making is in how we feel about something. That's the source. So we do a lot of rational thinking and, you know, oh yeah, even if somebody says, well, I'm logical, I want to make it. The person who says I'm logical actually goes, I'm logical because when I understand it, it feels right. Yeah? So the ultimate test is, does it feel right somewhere within this system? And if it feels wrong, our brain just keeps going. And actually, the neuroscientists I'm talking about are actually stating that thinking is only a byproduct of this process. Biologically, thinking is useless. Are there any other remarks or questions or maybe curiosities that you kind of have, that you kind of go, oh, anything you would like to know before?
May I ask you something?
Yeah,
If I understood it well, it seems like our brain has a memory on his own by the day we born, isn't it?
exactly. Yeah. And the more I work with this, the more I realize that we are probably completely born without any filling of feelings or emotions whatsoever. That everything that we feel, just think about this. From the moment we are born, our parents are interacting with us in a very intense way. In a very intense way, almost around the clock. All the feelings that we have, they didn't emerge individually. They emerged in interaction. All the feelings that we have emerged in interaction. And that's where I think the field of personal development has actually made a mistake. Because most personal development is about changing something within the individual, but our most important feelings actually emerged in interaction. So that's why relationships are so challenging for us. Because in interaction, our deepest feelings are touched. Our deepest emotional deregulation actually happens in relationships. That's why relationships are so incredibly challenging. Relations with a partner, but also relations with families, relationship with children. They really touch deep-seated feelings that we have had with us since our youth. So in order to make real profound change, you actually want to change this cycle of how the brain creates its predictions. All right, any other questions or remarks? No? Yeah, thank you, Paris, yeah. They determine our behavior, at every moment, yeah. So I hope I've been able to trigger you a little bit and challenge your thinking a little bit about, how does this all work on the inside? And of course, I'm hoping to see you in Athens in May, because it's going to be quite interesting, and you will learn actually the foundations of the model that I've been working with. And that model is an incredible tool that you can use in many instances. Alexis has experiences with it now, and he told me recently that it turns out he can use it on a lot of different things. Yanis and Alex have experience with it now. Well, there's so much I can say about this, but it's more important to experience it. So I hope next time you can join me in experiencing RETaC and how you can actually make change work. You said something. I didn't hear you.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Vasily, for this.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording. And yeah, thank you. I hope you had an interesting evening. and I hope to see you in Greece. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Vasily.
Bye.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Γεια σε όλους.
Bye bye.
Yes.
Γεια σας.
Thank you.